Pod Me If You Can is brought to you by The Glove by Australian author David Farrell. Head to facebook.com/theglovebook for more information.
Welcome to Pod Me If You Can. I'm David Farrell. Today on the show, the film is Search and Destroy, starring Christopher Walken, Griffin Dunne, John Turturro, Dennis Hopper, Ethan Hawke, and many more.
Pod Me If You Can. Movie reviews.
Martin, Griffin Dunne, owes $147,000 to the state of Florida. He's a dreamer, and he's dragged his wife Lauren, played by Rosanna Arquette, into his messy financial situation. He tries to convince self-help guru Dr. Waxling, Dennis Hopper, to let him film his book, Daniel Strong, an adventure story. In order to leave a legacy, he enlists the help of a shady crew and tries to get the film made despite financial obstacles. So the film's tagline is a screwball tragedy, and it's directed by David Sal, who is an artist and one-time filmmaker with this feature. Christopher Walken was the real takeaway here. He plays the opposite to the lead, Griffin Dunne. Basically, they've both read this adventure story, which hides within it, and it's a thick book too, hides within it 4 lessons for life, and they've interpreted them differently. So Griffin Dunne's interpretations about legacy and wanting to do something and fulfill something is one way, whereas Christopher Walken has taken more of a chaotic view, and that the whole world is doomed and that they're just on borrowed time, you know? Christopher Walken plays a kind of shady businessman. He's an alleged drug dealer who's interested in making the film happen, as he's read the book as well. In true manic Christopher Walken fashion, he does a song in the middle of the film and also does some tap dancing. I should mention that the song and tap dancing takes place in a restaurant. He's more interesting than Martin, the lead, and he's so random that it feels like he's not thinking about each move and plot point as he goes. Unfortunately, the downside of this film is that it's weird for weird's sake at times. You can see that they were cost-cutting and they were limited by budget. There's a sequence, for example, that people rave about on IMDb, where they're travelling by train, and instead of showing any kind of set with a train, they just laid over stock images of trains with the main characters, and kind of juxtaposed those 2 images together, and you get the idea that they're travelling, and that's fine, and that's plentiful, and that's enough. But there are also sequences where they're sitting in front of green screens, and the colours behind them are different and changing. And there are sequences where, for example, he's running, and the running repeats itself about 6 times, without ever doing that again at any other stage of the movie. If you want to go and do a style, fantastic. Make the film your own, by all means. And this was done by an artist who enjoyed juxtaposing images like that. But the problem that I have is that it's not consistent throughout the film. It feels random and thrown in when it's just the one-off. Ilena Douglas plays a receptionist for Dr. Waxling. She has a huge monologue about a penis claw that is captivating and interesting, and she calls Martin out on a lot of his bullshit. She goes along for the ride and is effectively the love interest for Martin. She has a pretty big part in this film, Ilena Douglas, and basically does a lot with a little here, I think. I feel like another problem with this, and it was based on a play, so there were probably lots of monologues and lots of, interesting on-stage antics. But the issue that I have with the film is that it seems to take very strange plot turns. You could point at that and say it's unpredictable and is the kind of movie that, you'll enjoy for its unpredictableness. You could never have seen that twist coming. But to ask the characters why they do the things they do is bizarre. For example, somebody shoots someone, and you go, well, what did they do that for? There's no reason to it. They introduce characters, for example, Ethan Hawke is in the film. He plays a guy who won't let Griffin Dunne's character Martin see Dr. Waxling. You don't have an appointment, you're not a part of the course, you can't see him. Fine. But then he finds a way to see him, and all of this wasted 10 minutes of Ethan Hawke, who never comes back in any capacity, is pointless. And there are scenes like that throughout the film. There's a criminal they meet up with, who they're going to do a deal with. They bring a suitcase full of money and they want to buy his suitcase full of drugs. The problem is that the crook says, nah, not going to do it, and leaves. He gets a bad feeling, he, vibes them wrong, and we've wasted another 10 minutes because now they're no closer to their financial goal and financing the movie. So there's many kind of left turns they take that don't pay off at all. Martin Scorsese has a cameo as a government accountant in just one scene. Rosanna Arquette plays his soon-to-be ex-wife in 2 short scenes, which are shot very strangely, highlighting parts of her body. Another character who's just off-the-wall crazy is John Turturro, who shouts about how he loves New York, is getting a suit made for himself, and he's only in a couple of scenes. He's a bit of an afterthought in the film, but he's very scene-stealing because he's loud and crazy. Robert Nepper, who many people would know as T-Bag from Prison Break, plays the character from the book, Daniel Strong, in a series of odd cutscenes that pepper the film. For me, the film is interesting and definitely has some talented people who are wasted in this role. You look at the film and you say to yourself, there's no connective tissue here. We meet Martin Scorsese's character. He introduces the fact that Martin is in financial trouble. He says, you owe us $147,000 to the state of Florida. He never returns. There's no claim on that debt. We don't ever hear about it again. It's just exposition at the beginning of the film. We meet Rosanna Arquette, who's playing his soon-to-be ex-wife, and she never comes back. She never has any comeuppance. She never, thinks about getting back together with him. They don't slide back and, get back together. There's no reason for her to be in the film. There were some good ideas here, and the fact that 2 people can read a book and interpret its meaning differently is interesting. And it's good to see Christopher Walken here. I think he does a good job in his role. Look, for me, the problem is that a lot of the love on IMDb, and there are multiple 9 and 10 out of 10 reviews, multiple reviews that state they've watched the film 8, 9, 10 times and are still intrigued by it to this date. For me, it's not a classic. It's interesting, I'm glad I watched it once, but I can't imagine watching it 10 times to get to that kind of fondness where they're at.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Check out our podcast at www.podmeifyoucan.com.